Today we are going to start the first part of the 356 build. Man, I'm excited. It's not gonna be on the doors like I thought it might be. I need to build a rotisserie-like thing to allow the car to tip up so I can work on the bottom side of it. I actually, if you watched the Ghia build, I built a rotisserie and had that all going, and I lent it out, and I called that gentleman here a week ago and said, hey man, I got another car project. I need my rotisserie back. And he's like, oh, sorry, bud. It got stolen by some meth heads. Long pause, long pause. So, do you want to pay me for it or what? And then just dead. If it would have been me on the other end, I would have said, hey man, I'll just write you a check. Actually, I would have called when it got stolen and said, hey, your stuff got stolen, bud. What do you want me to do? I'll either build you a new one or I'll pay you the money for you to build a new one. But that didn't happen, so whatever. We are here. It's gonna be a different type. It's like a half octagon thing. I'll show you a picture right here. I'm gonna drag this to Kansas City in a couple weeks, hopefully be able to cut out the floors, the rockers, the longitudinals, all the stuff underneath the car. And if I have any luck at all, I'll be able to get some of those pieces welded back in before the car comes back to Colorado with me. The first thing I've got here is a piece of 2x2. This is 120 wall. I like 120 wall. It's easily weldable with a wire welder. It's not terribly heavy, but it's strong enough to do just about anything you want. So I'm starting by laying out the bottom, whatever you want to call it, the bottom rail. So this is the rail that the wheels are going to weld onto. And then we'll have the upright and diagonal. Yeah, that's what we'll call them. The diagonal and the upright will weld to this as well. So I need two of these identical, one for the front, one for the back. For a lot of our cuts today, we're gonna be using this like super cheap Home Depot battery powered circular saw. The key is it has the Diablo Steel Demon blade, not a paid advertisement. They have no idea. Like I haven't reached out to anybody. I just bought this at, I think Home Depot, either Home Depot or on Amazon. I'll leave an Amazon link if it was Amazon, but it'll cut half-inch plate, steel plate with just a cheesy circular saw. I used it for the first time this past week, did not expect much and was blown away by how good it is. I have a really expensive Milwaukee in that box there, a Milwaukee steel cutting saw. It works awesome. This thing works every bit as good and is super cheap. A little bit of layout here. I have my adjustable square set to 22.5, which is half of a 45-degree angle, so that I can get this. I want to do this lazy as possible, right? So this is my angled piece, my diagonal as we called it. And then I'm just going to cut a V in here. So I took my 45-degree on my square here and lined it up and then scribed the back side of that. So I know this is 45. Then I transferred those marks across the top there. And I've got this guy set to 22.5 degrees. So I'll just make a cut through there. And then the depth is set right on the mark for just missing the bottom. Yeah. Oh yeah. Obviously we got a little adjustability in there with that opening, but that's pretty darn good. I'll take that. We've got all of our cut parts laid out. We've got our other pieces over here. I've got my helmet fired up. Let's weld. Time to attach the vertical and diagonal to the main beam here. When I was laying things out, I laid out a center line. So basically I need 34 inches in here. That's what the beam on the car is. So cool. It's kind of where I started all my dimensions. So I've got 17 inches. So there's 34 betwixt the wickets there. 17 inches, which is half of that, is to the corner of this. And then I need 70 inches clear on the inside of this. So the car is like 65.5 inches wide, something like that. So I wanted to leave a couple extra inches of space. So I figured 70 inches is the right dimension across here. So I took a line from the center line, 35 inches, and squared that on up. And that tells me where this needs to land. And then this joint is sort of arbitrary how much overhang I have here. But I want a little bit, because the wheel's gonna fit in here, and the lower this corner is, the easier it is going to be to tip this thing over. We're gonna have quite a bit of leverage up there, so that's what that's all about. But I'm gonna go through and recheck all my dimensions, just make sure I'm not gonna fail here. Too shabby. These two guys are the mounts that are going to mount to the front beam of the car. There's a sway bar up there with a couple bolt holes. I don't know the exact location, but I've got a 3-inch window to hit there on width, and then I made these 5 inches wide. I think the bolt holes are actually like 3.5 or 4 inches. They need to be 34 inches apart, and I'm just setting it. You can see that scribe line there. I'll set it on the scribe line. We'll square it up and then we'll let it rip. Oh yeah. One of the most important things that I've found, if you have parts that need to be the same, is you can lay them out on a jig or a board or what have you, but it's much better to get one part the way you want it and then stack the two parts, clamp them together, and then weld just right on top of the other one. Then you know they're absolutely identical. Welding operation I have is the two uprights that are going to mount back in the engine bay. The last two major pieces of this project are the side rails, if you will. So we've got a back piece that goes back by the engine and transmission. We've got a front piece that goes up on the front axle, and we want to tie them together. I'm drawing lines where we're going to tie them together. We're going to tie them together front to back with these. The measurement that I've got from the factory drawing says 95 inches center to center. So it's somewhere back in here. I've cut these 4 or 5 inches longer than they need to be, because when we get there, we'll know, right? So I'm just gonna tack these back pieces on. I've got the front ones ready to go. These are actually gonna telescope into the 2-inch tube. And you can see I've got 1.5 inches going into an 1 3/4 space. So I'm gonna weld a few little spacers on to these pieces to take up all that slack. Anybody who's ever worked on steel tubing knows if you're going to telescope parts, this little weld seam inside the tubing is very problematic. I, along with Matt Jackson of Next Level Carpentry, developed this tool. It was Matt's idea, and then I developed it into a working prototype and then a manufactured product. So it's called the Seams Impossible, and it's exactly for this purpose, is that there's the aluminum tool with the burr, and then we use a drill extension, and it connects to the burr and allows that burr to spin. And then we have different sized jackets, and then a pile of shims that come with our big kit that allow you to move this jacket around. This seam, I don't know if you guys can tell, but it's slightly off center. It's lower than the center, right? So I'll be able to put this jacket in there and then shim up this side and the top. This is 1.5 inch jacket. I think this is 1.75 inches here. So basically with a 1/4 inch shim, top and side, I should be able to push this tool over and get that seam taken out of there. Sometimes you gotta flip the script here on the shims so that they're on the front end if you've got to take the seam off from this side. A lot of times I drag the tool backwards through the piece, and you can do pieces that are 5 or 6 feet long, but this one, there's no opening on the other end, so we got to go from this end. But moving the shims around like that, allows me to put pressure right here. You can see where the seam has been ground down. It's that simple. It just takes a few seconds to clean out the seam. This one, you can see the weld mark here. I had to flip this shim around, no biggie. Just unscrew it and redo it. And here we go. You can actually see, in this configuration, you can kind of see the burr working. Sorry. Well, there it is, all laid out flat. I'm about laid out flat. I'm getting tired. I do want to thank everybody for following along on the very first real project video for the 356. I know the car wasn't here, we're not working on it, but this is going to help make that project possible. Oh no. Yeah, we got another project in the works, guys. That one's a real bummer, but totally fixable. So stay tuned for that one too. Thanks for coming along, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.